Hello and grüß Gott. Well, this is going to be part one of our Stillen Supercharger video. We'd already done a little intro, and this part here is we're going to drop the fuel tank and put in the new fuel pump. So with the Supercharger, it comes with a manual on what to do, step-by-step instructions, in other words. For this, you're going to need a brass rod to get the ring loose on top of the fuel tank. You don't want to use a steel object because it could spark and cause a fire or explosion. You're going to want to use a brass hammer. I'm going to use my brass machinist hammer. It's already a little bit damaged, so I'm cool with that. It comes with a packet, says fuel system on it. It's got the new fuel pump in it and some other various items that go into this initial installation. You'll need some gloves, some tape, some safety glasses, of course. To get the fuel tank loose, you're going to need a 17 millimeter socket. To lower the tank down, you're going to need a jack. So I have my Craftsman 2¼ ton trolley jack, which should allow me to bring it down. I'm going to put a board on top of it so that it won't damage the tank. And I have a halon fire extinguisher here as well, just in case anything goes wrong. Well, hopefully I can survive it. So I'm going to try to work safe. I've removed any sparking type things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the fuel door, and I'm going to take my cap loose, and then I'm going to go up to the front and we're going to disconnect the battery. So we'll start there and I'll be right back. So I'm going to disconnect the battery at this point. You always disconnect the negative first, followed by the positive. There's two reasons for that. If you could disconnect the positive first, you can cause a spark when you pull off the terminal, and it can ignite any gases that are coming out of here. Very unlikely, but it could happen. And the other reason is if you accidentally touch your wrench between here and the chassis of the car, that's not good. I've actually seen that happen, and it's not good. The battery actually explodes. So I'm going to take my negative terminal off first, and then I'm going to move it out of the way, and I'm going to tape it up so that it can't make contact, and that should be good enough. And now we'll start working on the fuel tank itself. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking off this large hose, and there's a smaller hose next to it that, from what I read on the internet, it's got a little clip and it breaks real easy. So I got to figure out how that works, because still in the instructions just says, well, pull it off. I mean, obviously this unclips here, but I'm not sure how this clip works for this hose to attach here. There's supposed to be a third one also. I'm not sure where it is. We've got to look and do a little more investigation, and I'll show you once we do that. But let's just get this one off first, and we'll go from there. We've decided, instead of taking it off right here, we're going to try to take it off up here because it's easy to get to. And so I'm using a ratchet and going to loosen this hose clamp. Let's see what happens. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to have a bag I can cover this hose with and tape it up so that there's no vapors coming out. So hopefully I have the tank empty enough to where it's not going to be a problem. It's down less than a quarter, but I didn't wait till the reserve light came on. So here we go, we'll do that. So I'm going to come back and I'll tell you what the result is. All right, at this point we have this hose taken loose over here, and we put a bag over it and taped it to stop the fumes. We have the other quick disconnect disconnected right here. This is very difficult to get loose. We had to work with it with some picks and stuff to get it to pop over the quick connect. So, but that's loose now, and now we're going to see what's coming next. So I'm not really sure. I have to look in the instructions, so I'll be right back. So I did disconnect this third line. You just push on these little clips and it just comes loose, and some gasoline is going to drip out. So you want to make sure that you bag it before you end up dropping this tank. So dropping this tank's the next thing we're going to do, but we're not going to just drop it down. We're first of all going to put a board between it and the jack, take the bolts holding it on loose. They're 17 millimeters. On this front piece, or this very back piece here that goes towards the back of the truck, there's just one bolt, and it goes over to a strap that's on like a hinge. And then the front ones, there's one bolt at each side.
So what we're going to do is drop it down a little bit so I can get my hand up in there and disconnect, I believe, an electrical connector for the fuel pump and the fuel sensor. And I think there's one more hose I have to disconnect. So we'll get to that point here in a second. First thing I'm going to do is start dropping this down.
Here's the gas tank. We took it out. One thing I wanted to mention was that we had jacked up this side of the truck before we even started the job to give us some room to get underneath. But it still wasn't tall enough for the tank, so we had to jack it up a little bit further. It's on jack stands. Everything's cool. Should slide right back in. So the tank is out. So the next thing we're going to do is take this ring loose so we can pull the whole assembly out. Before I do that, I'm going to put some paint markers on here so I know exactly the right orientation to put it back together. So we'll get that done and then we will come back. So what I've done now is I've kind of cleaned the top of the tank and I've put some marks so that I would know exactly not only how the ring goes on, but also how the piece fits inside, so it's oriented or orientated correctly. And so we've done that. I also went back and put a little bit of Krytox grease on any of the pipes that plug together, just a tiny bit, so that when they go back together, they'll go back smoothly. Also, I put a little Krytox grease on here. This is where one of the lines comes up and snaps into place. It's a line that goes here and attaches. So I want to make sure that it pops back into place appropriately when we put this tank back in. Now, in order to pull the tank out, we actually left the front loose, but the bolts were in a couple of threads. And we used the jack to allow the tank to come down in the back a little bit so we could get our hands up in here and get to these this fitting here, the connector we were able to get to with the tank fully in place. So again, want to just kind of go over that on how we did that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to knock this ring loose by using a brass piece to turn it counterclockwise. So I'm going to do that and then I'm going to come back and we're going to see what's next. Okay, so now I'm going to try to take this off counterclockwise and by tapping it. Almost there. Okay, so now the ring is loose and the instructions say be careful because this is spring loaded. Well, yeah, I can see it is, but barely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the pump assembly out, bag this up and tape it so that there's not any vapors around here. And then we're going to move to the next video, which will be replacing the actual pump with the high performance pump. So that's all there is to this video. Thanks for watching. Tschüss.